25 August 1944. In the smoking ashes of Warsaw, under skies choked with dust and gunpowder, a city that once sang with life now moaned in ruin. The battered husks of buildings leaned against one another like the dying clinging for comfort, their broken windows staring down at streets littered with shattered dreams. It was here, amidst this ghostly debris of human civilization, that a German officer and a Jewish pianist would meet, an encounter that seemed almost impossible within the monstrous logic of World War II, yet which became a testament to the frail, flickering humanity hidden even in the darkest corners of history. This is not a tale of grand strategy or sweeping battlefields, but of a moment too often buried under the thunderous accounts of war, a moment that reveals the hidden complexity of human choice in an age of unrelenting horror. Warsaw, in the summer of 1944, was a city undone. Once a vibrant capital with a proud cultural pulse, it had been razed by years of brutal occupation and the recent uprising, an uprising that had raged with desperate courage and perished in catastrophic defeat. German forces, newly brutalized by partisan resistance and Soviet proximity, enacted reprisals that transformed Warsaw into a near-lifeless labyrinth of rubble. In this tomb of civilization, a lone figure hid, emaciated, hollow-eyed, and on the brink of surrender. His name was Władysław Szpilman, a once celebrated Jewish pianist and composer whose fingers had once danced over ivory keys in the full flush of life. But now those hands trembled with hunger, and his soul bore the imprint of immeasurable loss. Szpilman's journey from radio studios to ruin began with the thundering collapse of September 1939, when German bombs pulverized Warsaw and ushered in occupation. On that day, he was performing Chopin on the airwaves, an act of cultural defiance against an encroaching storm. It was also the last time he would experience the ordinary rhythms of life. As the German military machine ground forward, Warsaw's Jews were herded into the vast enclosure of the ghetto, where starvation and disease became instruments of genocide. Szpilman played in cafes to scrape together meager rations, his music echoing within walls that shackled his people. In July 1942, fate delivered Szpilman a cruel twist. As his family was loaded onto trains bound for extermination, a Jewish ghetto policeman, recognizing the pianist's face from his performances, pulled him aside, saving Szpilman alone from certain death. Every one of his relatives perished, swallowed by the insatiable machinery of the Holocaust. After escaping the ghetto's final liquidation, Szpilman drifted through Warsaw's wreckage, sustained by a network of friends, both Jewish and Polish, who offered shelter at enormous risk to themselves. By August 1944, Warsaw was almost entirely deserted. Its buildings stood as hollow tombstones. Its streets, once thronged with life, were silent save for the scuttling of rats and the distant rumble of artillery. Szpilman had taken refuge in an empty house, wandering its guts like a trapped animal, haunted by memories and grinding hunger. He had become one of the so-called Robinsons of Warsaw, solitary survivors eking out an existence in the shattered carcass of their city. It was here, in this desolate theater of war, that destiny took an unforeseen turn. A German officer, Captain Wilhelm Hosenfeld of the Wehrmacht, entered the ruins on routine patrol, his boots crunching on broken masonry, his uniform smeared with the dust of obliteration. Hosenfeld was a man enmeshed in paradox, a Nazi officer steeped in the very machinery of occupation, yet deeply disenchanted with the ideology he had once embraced. Over time, the horror he witnessed in occupied Poland eroded his faith in the Reich he had once believed in, turning his conscience towards something anomalous in those times: compassion. When Hosenfeld found Szpilman, the pianist was barely a shadow of the vibrant man he had been. The officer's eyes, trained for surveillance and suspicion, landed first on the ragged figure and assessed him as another desperate soul to be executed or sent to a camp. But something about Spielmann's vacant stare pierced that first moment of judgment. Instead of ordering him to stand or surrender, Hosenfeld asked the starving man a strange question. "Are you a musician?" When Spielmann whispered that he was a pianist, the German officer gestured towards an old, battered piano in the room, its keys covered in dust. What followed is one of the most hauntingly human scenes of the entire conflict. Despite months without nourishment, Spielmann's fingers, though thin and trembling, found their way onto the keys. He played a piece by Chopin, a composer entwined with the soul of Poland itself, the notes fragile yet defiant against the cataclysm around them. The music filled the hollow space like a ghostly invocation of a world long extinguished, a plea for redemption in the face of annihilation. For Hosenfeld, this moment cracked something deep within him. The machine of war had taught him to see categories: enemy, Jew, soldier, civilian. But here was a man reduced to pure expression, stripped of labels. Instead of issuing orders, Captain Hosenfeld did something unfathomable in that world. He offered sustenance. He brought food, brought clothing, and in the freezing months that followed, he continued to supply Spielmann with the bare necessities of life. He even gave him a German coat so the pianist could venture out for water without immediately revealing himself as a Jew in hiding. This unlikely bridge between two condemned worlds, a betrayed Jewish musician and a disillusioned German officer, was a quiet counterpoint to the war's roaring brutality. Hosenfeld's actions were not grand revolts against policy, nor strategic defections to resistance cells. They were small, fragmented acts of humanity in a landscape designed to crush it. Yet these broken fragments, when seen closely, reveal how individual conscience could flicker against the overwhelming darkness of ideology and violence. Historians and memoirs alike underscore the broader shadow war played out beyond battlefields and strategic conferences, the psychological strife within men and women forced to navigate moral landscapes war had drowned in blood. Hosenfeld's diaries, unearthed and published decades later, divulge his searing shame at what he and his nation had become. "What cowards we are," he wrote, angered by the unspeakable cruelty inflicted on innocents. He documented these thoughts even as he secretly helped others, Jews and Poles, escape persecution, sometimes issuing false papers or arranging work assignments that offered temporary refuge from death. And yet, this story did not end with liberation. In January 1945, as the Soviet Red Army closed in and the Germans abandoned Warsaw, Hosenfeld's small acts of mercy could not spare him from the unfolding tides of post-war politics. He was captured by Soviet forces, accused of war crimes, a cruel inversion of historical justice, and sentenced to hard labor. His letters to his wife in captivity spoke not of grand ideologies, but of names: Leon Worm, Władysław Spielmann, the people whose lives he had touched, hoping someone might intervene on his behalf. Despite Spielmann's own attempts after the war to assist Hosenfeld, the officer died in Soviet captivity in 1952, a tragic casualty of the unforgiving sweep of post-war vengeance and suspicion.
For Spielmann, survival became an odyssey of fragmented memory and aching loss. He emerged from hiding after the Germans fled, stepping out into a Warsaw that was both liberated and devastated, a city reduced to its bones. The war had stolen his family, his youth, and nearly his will to live. Yet he lived, and in the decades that followed, he returned to music, his life's true language, joining the rebirth of Polish cultural life and becoming a symbol of endurance and artistic resilience. The resonance of this encounter between German officer and Jewish pianist echoes far beyond the specific moment in Warsaw's ruins. It exposes hidden dimensions of a war often understood in sweeping narratives of nations and armies, but less so in the intimate conflicts of conscience and mercy. These were the battles fought within hearts, in fleeting choices that defied the brutal imperatives of total war. They were acts that did not shift the course of battles, nor toppling regimes, but which shifted the course of individual fates, a life saved, an act of compassion etched into the fragile tapestry of what remained of humanity. In the dark theater of World War II, stories like Spielmann's and Hosenfeld's expose how truth resided not only in the vast calculations of strategy and destruction, but also in moments of profound human contradiction. The piano keys struck in an abandoned building were not just notes in a performance, they were affirmations of identity against an apparatus bent on erasure. The German officer's aid was not overt rebellion, but a quiet rejection of something monstrous he had once pledged allegiance to. These were the hidden incursions into the machinery of war that remind us, amid all the calculated horrors, individual actions still mattered. History remembers battles and treaties and regimes, but within its margins are stories like this, of chance encounters that illuminate the shadows, recalling that even in the depths of human atrocity, sparks of moral courage could still be struck. And in the ruins of Warsaw, among the broken walls and silent streets, the piano continued to sing, less as an escape from reality than as a testament to the enduring complexity of the human spirit.